Hi everyone, it's Maud here again, and today we're going to talk about another classical music heroine. Last time, for anyone who didn't manage to see the video, we were talking about a song by Schubert called Gretchen am Spinnrad, and we were meeting the heroine Gretchen, who was a very kind of shy, retiring young girl in love for the very first time and completely obsessed with her lover. Today we're going to meet someone very different. We're going to meet Musetta from La Boheme, and I've come in costume. Last time we were meeting a very sweet and innocent girl. This time we are not meeting a sweet and innocent girl. We are meeting one of the biggest rock stars of opera that you will ever come across. Musetta is one of my favorite characters to play because she just is completely herself. She's completely out for herself. I mean, she's very kind. She's very loving, but she doesn't let anyone take advantage of her, and she really owns her own story. So to give you a bit of background, so La Boheme is an opera by Puccini, and it's in Italian, and it's about young bohemians who are kind of in their 20s. You know, the equivalent now would be kind of recent university graduates or possibly people who've just finished school, not really working, kind of trying to work out what they want to do with their lives, still keen to be poets and artists and singers and musicians and actors and really cool stuff, haven't kind of got sucked into the machine yet, and started, selling out their souls for less exciting jobs. And it's about these four boys who all live up in a big loft together. There's Rodolfo, who's the poet. There's Schaunard, who is the musician. There is Marcello, who's a painter. And then there's Collina, who I actually don't know what he does. He wears a coat a lot of the time. I never really got into Collina. He doesn't say very much. No offense to anyone that plays him. I'm sure he's very exciting, but for Musetta's purposes, absolutely no interest, because Musetta is the girlfriend of Marcello, the painter. And she spends a lot of the time not being his girlfriend in this opera because he's not treating her as she deserves to be treated, and she gets very angry about that. And the first time that we meet her, it's in the middle of a fight between the two of them. So the first act of La Boheme, she doesn't appear at all. It's just the boys messing around, and then it focuses on the two kind of main characters of the opera, Rodolfo and Mimi, who are both very lovely, a little bit weedy. Mimi gets very ill from tuberculosis, as a lot of operatic heroines do. She needs saving. She's very sweet and gentle. She comes and she meets Rodolfo when she needs a light, and she needs help, and she needs her candle lit. Whereas Musetta comes in, she's like, none of this. I'm not doing any of that stuff. Musetta is completely confident from the very beginning. And so they have that kind of slightly weedy act one. Then act two starts, and it starts with all of the boys have gone down with Mimi to the Latin Quarter in Paris, and it's Christmas Eve, I believe. It's definitely Christmas. And they're all out for a big party, big celebration. They don't have any money because they're all starving artists. So they head down to the Café Momus, which is where they always go to drink and have fun. And they're kind of messing around, and Marcello and Musetta have broken up, as they have many times. And then Musetta turns up. And she turns up on the arm of a really rich guy who gives her everything she wants, and she's, cream of the crop, very happy. So I have come in costume, as I said. Musetta, the key hallmarks of Musetta are generally, big hair, as big as I can make my quite small hair, red lipstick and leopard print. If you see red lipstick, big hair and leopard print, you're probably looking at Musetta. She's kind of what we would call a tart with a heart. So she knows that. I think she probably doesn't come from money. Unlike maybe some of the boys who are the artists, I always wonder if maybe they were affluent with their parents in their childhoods. Musetta is not like that. She has to work for a living, and she teaches singing, and she does other things, and she needs to marry rich if she's going to live the lifestyle to which she intends to become accustomed. So she comes in, and Marcello's there, and he's furious that she's there. And she's kind of furious that he's there, and he won't look at her. And she walks in looking her absolute best. It's Christmas Eve. She's at the Café Momus in the Latin Quarter. Of course, she looks fantastic. And he won't look at her. And so she decides the only thing that she can do is pretty much stand up on a chair and sing a song about how she's so beautiful that everyone looks at her. And she points it directly at him, basically to rile him up and annoy him. And by the end of it, he gets riled up. They have a little moment. They then acknowledge they kind of can't really live without each other, and they get back together, as people do in operas. But this is her moment. She woos him by being so fabulous that he cannot possibly resist her. And actually, what I think is interesting, before we dive into the text, is that there was a modern musical written on La Boheme, which is called Rent, and it has all the same kind of characters in it. So if you're not so sure about opera, go and watch Rent, because it's the same characters, it's the same theme. And there's a really brilliant character called Maureen, who is the Musetta, and she, in Rent, actually, she's a lesbian, and she's in a relationship with one of the other girls. It's in like 1980s New York. She's played by Idina Menzel in the film, who was Elphaba in Wicked and was the voice of Elsa in Frozen. So she's an amazing singer, but she sings a version of this in English, which is called Take Me or Leave Me. And I think that that's kind of a nice place for us to start with the first phrase of the song, like we did last time. And I want to talk about it in both contexts, kind of musical theatre English and then La Boheme Italian. So what she says in Italian, in the original Puccini, is she says, "Quando men vo soletta per la via, la gente sosta e mira," which means when I go alone down the street by myself, all of the people stop and look at me. So she's not feeling like worried alone. She doesn't feel vulnerable. She loves that they're staring. They just look at her. She can't help it. And she says, "E la bellezza mia tutta ricerca in me." And my beauty, everyone can see in me, da capo a pied, from head to foot. So she's kind of a feminist icon and role model, you know. She's sort of way before her time, because she's able to just stand up and say, I am fierce, like wherever I go, whatever I wear, people stare at me and they think I'm beautiful. I think that's something we could all do with a little bit more of. So Maureen says the same thing in Rent, and I think we should start with that. I'm going to sing you the first snippet in English from the musical, and then we're going to go over and look at it in the Italian from the opera. So this is the English version of what we're about to hear in opera, and this is the first phrase of Take Me or Leave Me from Rent. Maureen's looking fabulous. She's walking down the street. She's feeling great. She says to her girlfriend, "Every single day I walk down the street, I hear people say, baby, so sweet. Ever since puberty, everybody stares at me. Boys, girls, I can't help it, baby." Okay, so that is how the writers of Rent translated this first sentiment. And I think it's important to understand that, because the first moment is really, it's quite surprising, I think, for a woman in, I don't know, the 1800s to be saying about herself. But, so this is Musetta, and this is how she says it. It's much stiller, it's much more self-possessed, but it's completely confident. Okay, first moment, first phrase. So she just says, everyone thinks I'm so beautiful. And we're going to put down the Rent for now, because that was just kind of an intro to get you hooked, I hope. So then she goes on to really talk about all of the things that she loves about being beautiful, and the way it makes her really happy, the way that everyone stares at her. And she says, "Ed assaporo allor la bramosia sottil che dagli occhi traspira." And she says, you know, I like to drink in, I like to breathe in this appreciation which comes from their eyes. I love to feel the way they're looking at me. I love to feel the way that they're thinking about me. And then she says, "E dai palesi vezzi intender sa alle occulte beltà," which is again saying, like, you know, I like to think about it. It's slightly fanciful. It's talking about, you know, ancient palaces, etc. But what she's really saying is the way that and to understand and to know the kind of power, the magical power of beauty, like the occult, which is almost like witchy. And then she, we'll do that bit first, and then we'll go into the second bit of what she says next. Okay, so here we go. This is her second phrase. si vezzi intender sa agli occulti vita. Okay, so that's the kind of, I think that's probably the hardest bit of her sentiment to really access. I think at this point she's getting a little bit carried away with what she's trying to say. But then she talks about how this kind of outflow, this effluvio, the flowing out of desire, kind of excites her. So she says, così l'effluvio del desio tutta m'aggira. Oh, I love it. I love the way they look at me. And then she says, felice mi fa. And she just says, it makes me happy. I am happy. And that's kind of the end of the first half. At which point I want to talk after we do this bit about the way that she then shifts and she looks at Marcello. And it's less about her and it's more about him. And I think it's really pointed. And we'll come to that after. So let's do Così l'effluvio del desio. I'm just going to go back one sec because I think I'm going to get caught out. Okay. Okay, so I got a little behind on the backing track there. I apologise. That's the problem with live theatre. It's always live. There are always little errors. Okay, so she said, così la fluvia, she said, tutta m'aggira felice mi fa. And I love that bit because she really goes, tutta m'aggira felice. And she's out. She's gone. But then there's this moment that you don't hear in the kind of solo version, which you do hear in the opera. She says, felice mi fa. She says, I'm happy. And then you hear this little snarky comment from Marcello on the chair. And he goes, quel canto scurrile, which means what a scurrilous, what a disgusting song. And then she snaps. And she says this, and it's not directly directed at him, could be at anyone, but it's so clearly at him. She says, e tu che sai che memori e ti struggi da me tanto rifugi. So she says, and you, who know better than this, who understand, that who struggle, who feel pain, you're coming for me. Da me tanto rifugi. You're running away from me. You're going to turn away and you're going to pretend that you don't know me. And, you know, it can be played in various different ways. Some people play it that she just doesn't notice him at all. She just kind of says, you know, all of you people, you know, why are you turning away from me? I don't see it, because the whole point of the song is you're all looking at me. The only person that's not is him. And so we're going to be dealing with him. And I think she maybe looks at him and she's like, and you who remember this, who know this, you're going to turn away from me? I don't think so. And so that's kind of the next moment where she starts to point it at him. And I think there's a little bit of sadness because on one hand, she's like, don't talk to me like that. Don't be rude. But I think on the other hand, she's like, how can you be like this? You know me. You've been my best friend in a relationship for years, you know. This is why I thought it was a good place to go from Gretchen, because it's the next stage of a relationship. They've been together on and off for so long. They know each other inside out and they're still in love, but they're fighting and they're kind of not kind of connecting in the way that she certainly wants them to. So yeah, so she turns to him and she really points this at him. So we're going to try that. For the purposes of now, I'm going to put Marcello over there behind you so I can see him, because I don't want to be like turning all the way when I'm trying to communicate. So let's do Musetta and Marcello. Sorry, horrible error there. Whoa, okay, let's do that again. That was what we call a technical difficulty. So I accidentally hit my backing track when I shouldn't have, which is such a shame because last time we did it absolutely perfectly. But that, as I said, is the reality of music. So let's go back to E tu che sai. the first part. And then she goes, so ben le angosce tue, non le vuoi dir. She says, I know well, you don't want to talk about your pain. Le angosce tue, non le vuoi dir. You don't want to talk about it, fine. Whatever, I know this. You've done this for so long. You're always bottling up your feelings, bottling up your emotions. She goes, non le vuoi dir so ben, I know that, ma ti senti morir. But she says, I know that looking at me, you want to die. Right now, you feel like you're going to die. And that it's not you're going to die of embarrassment or you're going to die of anger. It's you're going to die because you're so sad that you're not with me, that you don't have me, and you're so frustrated that you don't get this experience. And she really finishes up with a bang and she directs it straight at him. And this is the kind of famous moment where she does this very high note at the end, which is terrifying for all sopranos who have to sing it. But the emotion of it is like, I know what you're really feeling. You're going to pretend you're not, but it's not true. So let's see if we can get that on the backing track well. Yeah, there we go. So ben, le angosce tue, non le vuoi dir, non le vuoi dir so ben, ma ti senti morir. And that's the end. So I think what I want you to take away from this one, if anything, is that Musetta is different to, I think, a lot of the women that you might come across in opera, or that you might think you come across in opera. There's a lot of misconception around the way that heroines in opera behave, because we think of them as kind of a little bit weedy, a little bit wet, you know, a little bit more like, I would say, probably Mimi, you know, who has this illness and who ends up, you know, being really, really tragic and having all of these really emotional outbursts that are very sad. And we're going to see that next week when we talk about the Countess, who is kind of the final stage of how I see these relationships, which is really the 20 years in, when things are really bad with your partner and you're not connecting at all. Things have deteriorated and you don't have the youth and beauty anymore to be able to entrance them like Musetta does in this aria. But as the opera progresses, you know, she shows her heart is strong. She looks after Mimi, she looks after Musetta. She's very modern in the way that she behaves. And I think that she's really inspiring. And I think this is the kind of sentiment that I really hope we will see more of, you know, among the youth of today. And we do see it a lot. And I think that she doesn't take any nonsense off anybody. So that's Musetta. Again, I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to just go through all the way through the aria, start to finish, and I hope that you can kind of see the journey that Musetta goes on, from showing off about how beautiful she is, into really being quite hurt with Marcello that he's ignoring her, and then into finally saying, oh, I know what you're like. I know what you men are like. I know you don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to call you out. Okay, right. This is me signing off. Thank you very much for being a lovely audience, and I hope you enjoy the performance.
Ed assaporo allora bramo sia son